Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. It is tank review time once again. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the British Tier 7 heavy tank, the Churchill Black Prince. The Black Prince was intended to be the last in the line of British infantry tanks. British armoured warfare doctrine at the time dictated the need for two different types of tank. You had the infantry tanks and you had the cruiser tanks. The cruiser tanks were the fast, lightly armoured, mobile tanks like the Comet, the Cromwell, the Challenger. And the infantry tanks, like all the Churchills, were big, slow, heavily armoured. It didn't really matter that they were slow because they were designed to keep pace with and support the infantry, whereas the cruisers were designed to operate independently. The problem with the Black Prince was that it was very slow. It was a development of the Mark VII Churchill. It was even more heavily armoured, it was even more heavy, but it had the same terrible 350 horsepower Bedford twin-six engine. It was suggested that they could use the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine in this thing, but that idea never left the drawing board, and that never left the drawing board because of the development of the universal tank, the Centurion, which had the same 17-pounder gun as the Black Prince, was a hell of a lot faster, and had the same effective armour, thanks to armour sloping. So the Black Prince ended up never being needed, and only 7 prototypes were made, one of which still survives today at the Bovington Tank Museum. So the Black Prince in World of Tanks is a kind of what-if machine. What if this thing had actually been developed and used in combat? What if it had actually been fitted with that Rolls-Royce Meteor engine? There's the Rolls-Royce Meteor, 600 horsepower engine. There's the Bedford twin-six, the diabolically bad engine that was used on the Mark VII Churchill and was supposed to have been used on the even heavier Churchill Black Prince. Just, oh, it's bad news. The Rolls-Royce Meteor is a better engine, unquestionably. It's almost double the horsepower. So it'll give you a better power-to-weight ratio, you will accelerate a little faster, but it's never going to make you go faster than the top speed of 20 kilometers per hour. This is an incredibly slow machine. It doesn't turn very quickly either. The hull traverse is only 20 degrees per second. It does have a good amount of health though. 1450 hit points. That's only 50 less than the Tiger, which is sitting there at 1500, also at tier 7. 50-ton tank, yeah, it's pretty heavy. Pretty heavy, weak engine, not very mobile at all. We'll look at the armour in Tank Inspector, and we'll check out the gun by itself in a minute. The turret does turn quite quickly, which sort of compensates for the awful hull traverse. The turret will turn at 30 degrees per second. It's got a decent view range of 370 metres, and the radio will keep you in touch with the rest of your team at any range up to 700 metres. Now, before we flash up Tank Inspector to have a look at the armour profile of the Black Prince, we're going to take a look at the guns on the Black Prince. And the guns on the Black Prince piss me off. They piss me off for a number of reasons. Some of them are pretty trivial, some of them are not. Let's have a look at the stock gun on the Black Prince. The Black Prince only has 2 guns to choose from, so that's a kind of good news, bad news situation. The bad news, of course, is that you have to use the stock gun. It is absolutely terrible. It's a medium tank gun. It's a 77mm quick-firing Mark II gun. Or that's what the name of the gun would have you believe. It says it right there, 77mm. But down here it tells you that the calibre of the gun is actually 76mm, so that's a minor annoyance. Wargaming, make your mind up. A major annoyance, however, is that you have to fit a large calibre tank gun rammer to use that 77mm gun. Or is it a 76mm gun? There are other tanks in the game that have 76mm guns. We call them Tier 5 medium tanks. The M4 Sherman has a 76mm gun. Can you imagine the outrage if you had to use a large caliber tank gun rammer on the M4 Sherman? These things are expensive. And that pisses me off about the British heavy tanks. We're used to the British heavy tanks having to use medium tank guns. That's kind of the flavour of the British heavy tanks. Right up until the Conqueror at tier 9, you don't get an actual heavy tank gun on any of the British heavy tanks. And that's okay, we get that. But why are you making us pay for large caliber tank gun rammers on medium caliber guns? It just doesn't make any sense, and it pisses me right off. But anyway, it is what it is. Going back to the gun itself, this 77 or is it 76mm gun is terrible. There it is. It's the Comet's gun. It's a medium tank gun. It's a very, very medium tank gun, and that works fine on the Comet, but it ain't no good on the Black Prince. It's got a good rate of fire of 14.29 rounds per minute. The penetration is not good, 148. The average damage is bad, 140. The accuracy and aiming time, however, are pretty good, 0.34 and 2.3. And, you know, that works fine on the Comet, because the Comet is a fast manoeuvrable medium tank. It can get around the sides and rear, it can penetrate the sides and rear with 148mm of penetration. The Black Prince can't. It will only do 20 kilometers per hour. You are not going to have much fun grinding out the Black Prince with that 77, or is it 76 millimeter gun. You're going to want to upgrade to the 17-pounder as soon as you possibly can. The 17-pounder is better, undeniably a much better gun than the stock weapon on the Black Prince, but it's still not that good. The rate of fire drops to 12 rounds per minute. The penetration climbs to 171mm. It gets a minor average damage buff. It goes up from 140 to 150, which is still terrible. The accuracy and the aiming time stay exactly the same. 0.34 accuracy, 2.3 second aiming time. The gun is accurate and consistent and reliable enough for you to be able to hit weak spots, particularly on machines like Tier 9 heavy tanks, where 171mm of penetration just isn't good enough to penetrate the raw thickness of their armour. People will say, well, you can get around this by using armour-piercing composite rigid ammo, use premium or gold ammunition on it, and that will give you 239mm of penetration, but that comes at a price. And also you need to take this into perspective. Let's just have a quick look at an equivalent Tier 7 heavy tank, like the Tiger. That long 88mm gun comes with 203mm of penetration for 252 credits per shot. That's the standard ammunition on the Tiger. Switch back to the Black Prince, and people will always recommend taking a large stock of gold ammo on the Black Prince because of the lousy 171mm of penetration. Well, yeah, you do get 239mm of penetration if you use gold ammo on this thing, but that's not that much more than the 203mm that you get for 252 credits per shot on the Tiger. And this APCR is going to cost you 3,200 credits per shot. Don't forget the Tiger also has an average damage of 240, so it's getting slightly less penetration, doing almost twice as much damage. Do you have any idea how much money you are going to spend if you're doing 150 damage per shot and it's costing you 3,200 credits every time you pull the trigger? Yes, you can get better results if you load APCR ammo, which incidentally is APDS ammo, here on the Black Prince. Yeah, definitely. You will be much more competitive in Tier 9 games, but you will never run a profit on this tank. You will be bleeding money if you fire APCR ammunition from this tank for an extended period of time, and it only does 150 damage per shot. So in order to kill anything with premium ammo, you're going to have to be firing premium ammo for an extended period of time. The one good thing that I will say, however, about this 17-pounder gun when it's mounted on the Black Prince is because the Black Prince is such a slow tank, the size of the gun's aiming circle when the tank is moving at its full speed of 20 kilometers per hour and the size of the gun's aiming circle when it's stationary, there's not that much difference. That means that the Black Prince is a very good tank at firing on the move, and you're probably going to get a lot of experience of firing on the move in the Black Prince because it's so slow. The chances are, on a lot of maps, you're going to be seen long before you can actually get yourself into firing position. And the good rate of fire and the stability of the tank's aiming means that you're going to be able to score some successful hits at targets that think, Black Prince in the open, no problem. And they're going to get a very nasty surprise when you don't slow down and you start scoring hits on them. This is a very good gun in that respect, and that respect alone. So I flashed up Tank Inspector to take a closer look at the armour of the Black Prince. Now, the Black Prince has a reputation for phenomenal toughness, and yet, remember, this is a Tier 7 heavy tank, so it's going up, even when this thing is top tier, with the best possible matchmaking, it's going up against tanks like the Tiger, the T-29, the IS-2, and the IS. Those tanks all have guns with penetration ranging from 203 to 175mm of penetration. The hull armour on the front of the Black Prince right down there, is 140 millimeters thick. Every other Tier 7 heavy tank in World of Tanks has the penetration to easily get through the frontal hull armour of the Black Prince. So where does the Black Prince's reputation for toughness come from? Good question. Well asked. The trick to bouncing shots with the Black Prince, as with so many other tanks in the game, is all down to angling the armour. This 140mm of armour on the lower glacis, well, this armour in itself has its own innate sloping. There's a sort of reverse slope going on here. And what that means that even directly from the front, this 140mm down here is technically thicker than the 152mm up here. This 152mm zone is completely flat. This 140mm zone is sloped back. So even directly from the front, this 152mm is actually worse than this 140 because the sloping, it has 153mm of equivalent armour. Now that's obviously still not enough to deal with even the 175mm penetration on a Russian or Chinese Tier 7 heavy tank. If we start angling the armour, however, and we're giving it roughly 30 degrees worth of angling there, suddenly that's now 177, depending on the exact part of the lower glacis that you're shooting at, anything from 170 to 190mm of thickness. Now we're starting to give Russian and Chinese heavy tanks problems when they're shooting even at our lower glacis. Angle it even more, and now we're starting to give German long 88mm guns problems, even when they're firing at what is technically the weakest frontal armour on the tank. That ranges anything from 193 to 215mm of penetration. But Jingles, now you're exposing the side armour of the tank. Well, the side armour of the tank is not fantastic. It's 83mm thick. But at that angle, that's a 67 degree angle. That's 206mm equivalent of armour. This is just about, if you're in the open and you don't have anything you can take cover behind, this is just about the perfect angling that you can present the armour of the Black Prince to the guns of enemy tanks. You're basically given the entire front of the tank an equivalent of over 200mm of armour. This is where the reputation for toughness comes when you're driving the Black Prince. Now that 200 plus millimeters of all-round frontal armour protection when angled is fantastic news if you're in a Tier 7 maximum game, if this tank is top tier. But as a Tier 7 heavy tank, you can end up facing tanks like M103s, E75s and IS-8s. And those tanks have guns that laugh at 200mm of armour. The Black Prince can still work, even in a Tier 9 match, but in order to make the armour of the Black Prince work in a Tier 9 match, you've got to start taking advantage of the terrain and obstacles, and side-scraping the tank. And to give you an example of the sort of thing I mean, let's say, if you can imagine, as you can see the crosshair here, imagine that the vertical line on the crosshair is the side of the building, and we drive the tank up to the side of the building, and we turn the turret of the tank to point towards the enemy. Let's try and get this right. There we go. Bingo. New feature in Tank Inspector that I wasn't aware of. You can actually rotate the turret. We learn something new every day. So there we go. Now, what we have here is our Black Prince, which is driven up to the corner of a building. He's side-scraping the tank so that he's able to point the gun around the corner of the building. So everything to the left of that vertical line on the crosshair is all that he's presenting towards the guns firing back at him. This side armour is now an automatic ricochet zone for an 88mm gun. Anything over 70 degrees of angle is an automatic ricochet unless you overmatch the armour of the tank. What overmatching means is that the calibre of the shell that you are shooting at the tank has to be at least 3 times the thickness of the armour. That's 95mm of armour on the side of the Black Prince here. There aren't that many 300mm guns in World of Tanks. That's an automatic bounce zone. So the only place you can really hit the Black Prince when it's side-scraping like this is the front of the turret. And the front of the turret is incredibly well armoured. taking a closer look at the turret front of the Black Prince. This part here is 240mm thick. The gun mantlet is another 240mm thick of spaced armour. The turret front of the Black Prince is good in any game that it gets into. Again, it's kind of flat, it's kind of boxy. And when you're not aiming the gun directly at the target, you are also still going to need to angle the turret in much the same way that mouse drivers, when they are not directly ready to fire at the target that's in front of them, while they're angling their armour, they also turn the turret slightly to the side, because there are plenty of tier 10 and 9 tanks in the game that can penetrate the turret front of the mouse. You have to do the same thing in the Black Prince. So once again, we're going to turn the turret. There we go, that should do. About that kind of angle when we're parked around the corner of a building, we're not ready to fire, and that is now 262mm of effective armour. Even in a tier 9 game, you can make the armour of the Black Prince work, regardless of what is being fired at you, but you have to take advantage of terrain. Side scraping in cities is the natural environment for the Black Prince. It is an incredibly tough tank to take down if you make the correct use of the environment. As far as the sides and rear of the Black Prince are concerned, it's bad news. Not surprisingly. It's still got strong side armour. That's 95mm of side armour there, on the side of the hull and the side of the turret, but 95 isn't good enough. Tier 5 tanks are going to penetrate the side of this thing if they hit it square on. Also take special note that the tracks of the Black Prince, they do count as 20mm of side armour, but they don't cover the whole of the side of the tank. There's a big old gap right here in the side where the tracks do not cover it. And that's 95mm thick, but you know, even an M4 Sherman can get through 95mm of armour. From the rear, it's just a disaster zone. 51mm there, 25mm there. Still got the same 95mm at the rear of the turret. So if you get yourself around the back of a Black Prince, don't aim for the turret, aim for the rear of the hull. You'll probably penetrate the turret anyway, but if you aim for the rear of the hull, there's a good chance you're going to set this engine on fire, and we love setting tanks on fire. So there you go, the armour of the Black Prince. It really is a very, very well armoured machine, but you have to angle it. And the higher the tier of the battle that you get into, you have to start taking more and more advantage of terrain features in order to side scrape this tank around. The one final thing that I'll say about the Black Prince, before we move on to the gameplay section of the review, is that upgrading this thing is actually a very, very painless process, providing, like me, you have already gone down the British medium tank line at least as far as Tier 8 and the Mark 1 Centurion. If we have a look at the research tree, you'll see that there isn't actually that much to unlock on the Black Prince in the first place. It only has one turret. The stock turret is all it uses. All you're going to have to research on this tank, providing you own a Mark 1 Centurion, is the tracks, and that's 8,600 research points. The engine, the Rolls-Royce Meteor, you will have already unlocked on the Cromwell at Tier 6. The top radio you will have already unlocked on the Comet at Tier 7. And the 17-pounder gun you will have already unlocked on the Centurion Mark 1 at Tier 8. So despite the fact that I did bang on about how bloody awful this 77mm gun is, and it is terrible, you're never going to have to use it as long as you have a Mark 1 Centurion in your garage. So, let's see how this thing plays. First game in the Black Prince, Tier 7 Heavy Tank Platoon. I'm in the Black Prince, Quickie Baby is in the T29. Matchmaking, not especially bad, not especially good. This is the average kind of matchmaking you can expect when you're playing World of Tanks. A Tier 7 Heavy Tank, we're in a Tier 8 game. The good news is that we're on Ruinberg. Black Prince drivers love city maps. We rub our hands together and cackle with maniacal glee whenever we find ourselves on city maps. This really is the natural environment for this tank, and most of the replays, in fact, all of the replays that you're going to see in this video are all of Black Princes on city maps, because that is really where this tank shines. You're going to see why. I have to admit, however, at the beginning of this game, especially when I saw what that Hummel was doing, this match was not giving me a warm fuzzy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I think the Hummel driver may be brain damaged. He thinks he's driving a tank destroyer. How long do you think he's going to last in that position? Still, there was a lot of it around. Wait until you see the enemy Hellcat driver. Why is it always Hellcats? What Hellcat drivers? Why are you always in such a rush to die? Watch this. Here he comes. There's one. There's two. We've lost the Hummel already, of course. He's been killed by a Panther. And bang, there's three. Great, so you finished off a badly wounded Rheinmetall Ballsug, and it cost you your tank, and you're out of the game. Congratulations. Well done. You did like 400 damage. Awesome. And now you're dead. Now there's a much better target. AMX 5100. Angle the armour. As it happens, I think he misses anyway. Yep. Now he's trying to get out. Check around the corner. Oh, we've got problems coming around that side. Now, I don't want to go around that corner to my left because there's an AMX 5100 who's just waiting to pop out and shoot me in the ass when I go around. So instead, I'll go around this way and try to assist those guys in the middle. Get some shots into that Tiger if I can. And there's a nice dead Hellcat here I can use to go hull down behind. And the Tiger's in fire and he's dead. Managed to get a shot into him before he went down. And there's all kinds of juicy targets around this corner. And oh, look at this. I don't just have a wall. I can side scrape around and put shots into the side of the turret of that KV-1S. This Hellcat. I'm hull down and side scraping behind the wreck of this Hellcat. Thank you so much for playing. Oh, he's got friends, however. Okay. And oh, took a hit. Wow. Oh, it was artillery. Ah. Yes. Yeah, you can't side scrape artillery, unfortunately. Tracks back up. And yeah, I'm getting the hell out of there. That's a great corner, but artillery loves to punish people hiding on that spot. I was actually thinking about chancing my luck on that corner again, but you know the love affair I have with artillery, so no, not worth it. Not going to give him the satisfaction. Instead, the AMX 5100, he's in a bad position, but he's going to make the most of his remaining clip of ammo. Yep, he's wrecking those guys from behind. There's a whole bunch of us closing in on him. Donk the first shot, hits the balustrade, the building between me and him. But, yeah. Anyway, AMX dead. Now I can support this T-34. I do end up giving him a little bit more support than he bargained for. Tiger 2, side of the turret. 171mm of penetration, more than good enough to get through that. And the gun is accurate enough to fire through the obstacles and still hit with every shot. Going for his ammo rack here. And that's exactly when the T-34 chooses to move forward, and I accidentally hit the T-34 in the back. Now, normally I would stop and apologise, but I was kind of busy driving a tank. It didn't go unnoticed, however. Our KV-2 is obviously watching from my perspective after he's died, and he's laughing his ass off at me. There's only 3 of them left now, and I need to motor in order to, you know, get any more damage done. I come around the corner, and I thought this T-34 was going to put one into me. You see his gun tracking me here. He settles for just calling me an idiot, so, well, which is fair enough. I mean, I didn't mean to shoot him, but I didn't say sorry either, so, yeah, he calls me an idiot. Fine, no need to apologise now. Quite lucky in a way that the T-34 spent so long sitting there thinking about whether or not he was going to put a shot into me, because it meant that I didn't have to chase the kills and try to beat him to it. You see the Jag Panther there making a run for it, E25, getting ready to put a shot into him. I beat him to it, he finishes him off. Now the artillery, we've been spotted obviously, but E25 zips around the corner, jumps into cover on the other side of the rock from the artillery. I can just hit this guy's... There we go. Bingo. He's immobilised. Artillery's stuck. He's not going anywhere. He takes a shot, hits the rock in front of him. E25 jumps all over it, zips around the corner, finishes him off. Carries on The Stuart Emil fires and misses. E25 is going to attempt to beat his reload and finish him off before he can plant another shot into it. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? And the answer would be no. Which allows me to get the kill. So just short of 2,000 damage done, which in a tier 8 game isn't bad. How about a tier 9 game on the same map? So we're still on Ruinberg. This time I've got Rheinmetall Borzigs and M103 shooting at me, but we've got the world's best scout, a brain-damaged AMX-12T. No, I have no idea. Oh, now, I was very surprised that that penetrated, the SU-122-44, but I was angled a little too much, which basically gave him the side of the tank. And very, very surprised that that Rheinmetall Borsig was more interested in shooting the IS-8 than me. Bounce another shot from the SU-122-44, but I'm pushing my luck here. Retreat behind the cover of the IS-8. Borsig comes out again. We managed to finish him off. Bounced another shot from the SU-122-44, the world's best scout beside me. Taking hit after hit. It's quite comical actually watching this little guy trying to angle his armour against SU-122s and M103s. The IS-8 is well, the IS-8's got good spaced armour on the side, and his tracks were eating a lot of shots here as well, but sooner or later these guys are going to realise that all they actually need to do is shoot at his front rather than trying to hit his side, and he's going to go down. But when he does go down, I can use him as cover. And T-34, 17 pounder, I mean this is a tier 9 game, I've got mostly tier 8s and 9s in front of me, but I'm still able to penetrate these guys. It is consistently good enough to be able to hit weak spots like the commander's hatch and the top of the T-34, and the commander's hatch on the top of the M103, which is down there. Can't always penetrate them of course, but you can hit them. Oh, nearly shot. That would have killed the IS-8. Oh, as it happens, he turns too much and they finish him off anyway. But now I can use him as cover. I can go hold down behind this guy. Just have to angle it properly, cover as much of the tank as possible, and we're golden. This is a great spot. T-34 dies. I've still got that M103 in front of me, however. And you'll notice that even in a tier 9 match, I don't load, well, I don't even carry any armour-piercing, composite-rigid, premium ammunition for the 17-pounder gun. I probably should, because it's intensely frustrating when you're in this sort of position and you do actually manage to hit the commander's hatch, for example, of a tank like the M103, but it doesn't penetrate anyway because it may be a weak spot, but it's not that weak a weak spot. I've taken multiple hits from this M103, by the way, but not one of them's penetrated. The only damage I've taken so far in this game is the first shot that hit me from that SU-122-44. M103's paying attention to the map. He's obviously realised he's about to be outflanked. He's moving up to get better cover from the tanks coming around behind him. Making a last stand behind this fountain. It's going to make it very, very difficult for me to hit him. And it's going to make it very difficult for him to hit me as well. You just keep putting the shots in. So, even in a tier 9 game, as long as you can keep control of your positioning, you can still do well in the Black Prince. Unfortunately, when you lose control of your positioning, like this, as this AMX M4 comes around and YOLOs me, I'm forced to abandon my position or give him shots in the side. I'm trying to keep him between me and the M103, but 2 on 1, I'm no longer in control of the situation. That's when Black Princes die in tier 9 games. Final replay is a Black Prince driver's wet dream. Top tier, and we're on Himmelsdorf. Oh, yes please. This is Lizu 1, or is it Litsu 1? I really don't know how to pronounce that. We're just going to call him Liz. Liz here is cackling with glee because he's in a Black Prince in a tier 7 maximum game on Himmelsdorf. And he's going to show us why this tank is the undisputed king of angling and side scraping, despite a 1 in a million hit that he takes right at the beginning. You're not going to believe it when you see it. I certainly didn't. I had a watch the replay twice, freeze frame it, watch it from several different angles. It was just unbelievable. But don't hold that against the Black Prince. It literally is going to be a 1 in a million shot. It's coming up very, very soon. There's an IS-2 at the bottom end of this long old road underneath the hill here on Himmelsdorf. And Liz does nothing wrong here. He's going to side scrape on the corner, and it's absolutely perfect. There you go. That's exactly how you want to be doing this. His first shot misses the IS-2. His second shot, how the hell did that penetrate? Do you see that? Straight in the gun mantlet. That looks like it hit him right in the gun mantlet. 175mm of penetration should not be able to get through that. So I zoomed in for a closer look. This is a 1 in a million shot. It actually hit right there under the gun mantlet. That's 152mm thick, but at that angle it's closer to 300 effective thickness. What actually happened was the shot hit that, ricocheted up, and went in behind the gun mantlet. That IS-2 could take that same shot 50 times and never do it again. Even a broken clock tells the right time twice a day. So that one was such a fluke, we're just going to pretend it didn't happen. Right, we're going to let him have that one. Now, right now it looks as if the team are advancing aggressively down the road. The Black Prince moves up, the T-29 decides to follow him. So Liz decides okay, but then of course they all stop suddenly. Black Prince has just advanced to the next bit of cover, the T-29 stops in the middle of the road. Liz is looking for a shot, a way to get around without blocking the T-29. You'll notice he never drives at a straight angle towards these two enemy tanks. He always has some sort of angling going on against the Tiger. Fires on the move, bounces a shot from the Tiger, hits the Tiger with his first shot, maintains his angling against the IS-2 while the Tiger's reloading. The Tiger's coming back out, finishes off the IS-2, keeps the angling going, does not drive in a straight line towards this Tiger. Tiger's reloaded, hits him, he's angled. All it does is blow his tracks off. He's obviously got a good repair crew on this tank. He gets the tracks back up again before the Tiger's reloaded, firing on the move, hits the Tiger again. Of course, now that the Tiger's the last one alive, everybody straps their man pants on and starts getting in each other's way in the mad rush to be the first ones around the corner and kill this Tiger, completely oblivious to the fact that there is another Tiger down that road to the right who has just set on fire, tracked and killed the Black Prince that rushed forward. Liz manages to get the final shot into this Tiger, there it is, and finishes him off. However, bad news. They've lost control of the hill. There is a friendly Tiger at the back end of the road that they all just came from, who's in serious, serious trouble. Now, with a 20 km/h top speed, it is highly unlikely that Liz is going to be able to make it back down this road in time to come to the aid of the Tiger, who's fighting off all these enemy tanks. However, he should at least be able to get back up here and get shots in and prevent them from exploiting this gap in the defences. His first target is an AMX-12T. He quite deliberately is aiming for this guy's tracks. Now, despite the limitations of this 17-pounder gun, it does reload pretty quickly. And in occasions like this, where you don't have the alpha damage to outright kill somebody, what you can do with the rate of fire of this gun is hit them in the tracks and keep them pinned in position while you reload and hit them over and over again. The complete opposite of tier 7 heavy tanks with big guns like the IS, for example, and we're going to see a perfect example, because you can be hit, for example, by an IS in the tracks, immobilised, and have your tracks repaired before the IS can capitalise on it and hit you with a second shot. As we're going to see here, he's angled, the IS hits him, he spins, he is now facing directly towards the IS. If the IS reloads and hits him in the lower glacis now, well, it's just not going to happen, is it? He's able to get the tracks back up, re-angle the tank, continue bouncing shots long before the IS can capitalise on his immobility by slamming a second shot into him. This IS knows that he has to try to use his superior speed and manoeuvrability to get around Liz's Black Prince and put shots into his side, but Liz knows that just as well, and he keeps this guy pinned, keeps his tracks blown off, immobilised, and finishes him off. Type T-34, it's killed by the KV-3 on the flank, but this is bad news. There are now 2 enemy tanks in the camp, both tier 7 heavies. Watch what he does to this Black Prince. He hits him in the tracks, he spins him, he's now got clear shots right at this Black Prince's lower glacis. Look how he's angled. That enemy Black Prince just doesn't have a prayer of penetrating him. The only damage he's taken this entire game with that 1 in a million shot from the IS-2 right at the beginning. He's taken multiple hits, but none of them have penetrated it. It's all down to his angling and his side scraping. Unfortunately now he's got to get into the cap circle and he has to reset, and he is probably going to take some damage as he goes around this corner. Right now speed is of the essence. He's just got to hit and penetrate, and unfortunately his first shot bounces off the side of the Tiger, but he reloads so quickly the second one doesn't. He's hit the Tiger. The enemy Black Prince keeps giving him his side. There you go, cap reset. He did take some damage there, but he has the health. And then the Tiger, for some bizarre reason, I mean, he's going for the T-29, but I don't know why he couldn't hit him from back there. Instead, he just keeps giving the rear and side of his tank to Liz's Black Prince. And now Liz has got a clear shot at the enemy Black Prince, and the Tiger's not feeling so brave anymore. Comes around the corner, hits him again, gets a bounce. The Tiger's angling, he's angling. Yeah. Oh, is that a Top Gun? I think it is. Now it's 2-on-1, and it's an enemy KV-3, another tier 7 heavy tank. So it's 2 tier 7 heavies versus 1 tier 7 heavy, but the KV-3 clearly knows what he's doing. He's on 4 kills. And Liz is saying to this T-29 driver, okay, let's stick together, dude. So, of course, the T-29 immediately starts reversing and going his own way, because World of Tanks. Yeah, the T-29's decided that no, he's not going to stick together with Liz's Black Prince. Instead, he wants to go 1-on-1 against an enemy tank who's already got 4 kills, because, you know, World of Tanks. And there he is, and he's got his wish. Fantastic. Yeah, you wanted to fight the KV-3 alone? You fight the KV-3 alone. Let us know how that works out for you. Now, I do realise I'm probably going to get into trouble for promoting gambling because it's a sin, but place your bets. How well do you think the T-29 is going to do in the 1-on-1 fight against the KV-3 that he so desperately wanted? He's taken a hit. It's not looking too good. I mean, they're both tier 7 heavies. How? Yeah, okay, that didn't actually work out too well for him. KV-3's just fired, so Liz is quite safe popping around the corner, taking that shot. He's then able to angle the tank. KV-3, remember, 122mm gun, slow reload. KV-3 tries to get around him. No, I don't think so. Blows his tracks off. Can the KV-3 reload in time to beat the 17-pounder gun? No, not when you're on fire like that, you can't. Oh dear, too bad, so sad. Not today. Better luck next time. And that, folks, is why the Churchill Black Prince is the undisputed king of side scraping and angling, and it'll fight anybody who says different. As long as, you know, the fight's on a city map. So, Churchill Black Prince, British tier 7 heavy tank. I was not expecting to like this tank, and yet I did. My only previous experience of driving this thing was on the test server back when the British heavy tanks were being introduced. This is a tank that lives and dies on the strength of its armour and how well you angle that armour. And the test server is a very gold-rich environment, and it's slow, the gun isn't that good. If the armour becomes meaningless, then this tank has nothing going for it. And of course on the test server, everybody's firing gold at you. So it shouldn't really have come as a surprise to me that I didn't have much fun driving this thing on the test server, and that left a bad impression of the tank in my mind. So much so that when I came to unlock this thing after driving the Churchill Mark 7, I did not expect to be able to do well in it. And it came as a very pleasant surprise to me, and it really shouldn't, how effective this tank can actually be. It is an absolute monster in a tier 7 maximum game. However, the higher the battle tier of the battles that this tank gets into, it tends to suffer more, I think, than any of the other tier 7 heavy tanks. The AMX M4 and the Tiger, for example, both have very accurate 88 and 90mm guns. They can quite safely engage and hurt tier 9 heavy tanks from long range. The T-29, the American tier 7 heavy tank, has a fantastic turret front. If you can get the T-29 hull down, it can weather the storm from, even tier 9 tank destroyers, tier 9 heavies, and so on and so on. The Black Prince, not so much. It's down to the 17-pounder gun. The armour is still good on this tank, even in a tier 9 game, as you saw in the replays. You do need to be in a location where you can take advantage of side scraping in order to effectively bounce shots when there are tier 9 shooting back at you. You can't do that on every map in the game. The Black Prince loves fighting in cities, but even when it can take advantage of the terrain and make itself relatively immune to return fire, it does struggle to actually dish the damage out. The 17-pounder gun is pretty accurate. You can hit weak spots with the 17-pounder gun, but it just doesn't do enough damage. 150 damage per shot on a tier 7 heavy is pretty bad. And yet, while I have never done spectacularly well in the Black Prince, I can't really remember doing spectacularly badly either. It's one of those tanks that is all right. Spectacularly good when it's top tier. Just all right when it's not a top tier. It's not a bad tank. It's certainly not fantastic, and I have had fun driving it. Perhaps you will too. Who knows? I'm definitely looking forward to the Carnarvon, however. Something that can actually move, even if it does sacrifice a bit of armour, and it gets a much, much better gun. So there you go, the Churchill Black Prince British Tier 7 heavy tank. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.